What happened?
Bow chicka wow.
Many things.
Alright, so do you think our friendly neighborhood Randall Tarley made the soldiers take baby steps all the way back to King's Landing? Game of Thrones Season 7, Episode 4 was one of the best episodes ever. Very powerful. Now we've seen people go head to head before, people that we love, like Tyrion and Davos at the Battle of Blackwater, but this loot train battle felt different. It felt intimate, it felt sad. For the first time, I wasn't just watching a battle for the action, but I was truly vested in the well-beings of these characters on both sides of the battle. Before the battle, Randall Tarley speaks to Jaime as if the soldiers are just objects, whereas Jaime clearly sees them as people. And Dickon Tarley shows remorse for having had to fight the Highgarden men from episode 3, since some of them were his friends. So writers did a great job of humanizing the nameless soldiers, so that we felt wronged when Dany flew in there and burnt them. Let's talk about that. So Jon had one of the most important lines of the episode.
But if you use them to melt castles and burn cities, you're not different.
But lo and behold, Dany has become what she claimed she was fighting against.
They're all just spokes on a wheel.
She's become a spoke on a wheel. After hearing about Casterly Rock and Highgarden, she freaks out and goes from smiling at Tyrion to insinuating that he is the enemy simply because he was born a Lannister. This is a huge red flag to her state of mind. She's insane. Westeros needs leaders like Jon, Davos, and Tyrion, not Dany. Figuratively speaking, the Queen is gone.
The Queen is gone.
Back to the battle. This takes place very close to King's Landing, on the south side of the river. We finally get to see the Dothraki shoot bow and arrows while riding, which is something that they're known for. Bronn was able to shoot down Drogon with a scorpion, similar to Rhaenys and Meraxes being shot down in the First Dornish War. Jaime seems to have a similar flashback that he has in the books a lot, where he sees fire and uncomfortably thinks about Mad King Aerys, and the episode ends with Jaime sinking to the bottom of a lake. Thankfully, Bronn is not wearing any plate and mail, so he'll probably swim down there and get him. If you didn't know, what makes the Ironborn unique is that the majority of them wear mail and plate while sailing, because they're not afraid of drowning. We saw this in episode 3 with Euron Greyjoy, and there's a phenomenal chapter in A Feast for Crows about Victorian Greyjoy, so check out that video. So what do we see here? We see thousands of people die, people that could have been used to fight the dead army, and Dany burnt the food supply, food that would have been crucial to surviving the winter. She fought in Essos as a breaker of chains, and people died, but she was motivated by the right reasons. What was her motivation for this battle? I think Dany would be better for the Lowborn than Cersei, but that's a moot point. The point is, she isn't fighting for the people. Thousands of people died here because Dany has been brainwashed into thinking that the Iron Throne is her right. I am not a fan of Dany right now. But on a lighter note, the scene was beautifully shot. I couldn't make sense of the archers when we saw this shot back in the preseason trailers, but now it makes sense. Those little arrows probably can't penetrate Drogon's scales, but it forced him to bank right in order to protect his rider. Good move. But how come Dany is not using a Dragon Rider saddle like many riders in the past? When Drogon was hit by the Scorpion Bolt and he spun over, at first I was scared that she's gonna fall off, or that both him and Dany would come crashing down to the earth. Aemon, Daemon, and their dragons, Vhagar and Caraxes, died this way during the Dance of Dragons. So Vhagar and Caraxes clashed in midair, then they fell all the way to the ground. On the way down, Daemon Targaryen jumped over onto Vhagar and stabbed Aemon one eye through his eye with the Valyrian steel sword Dark Sister, which eventually became Bloodraven's, which many of us now suspect is in the hands of Mira Reed. Aemon used a dragon riding saddle, and I think that Daemon did too, but he didn't buckle in, which is why he was able to jump over onto Vhagar. But anyway, I'm surprised Dany's not built a saddle yet. It seems like common sense. The shots with Bronn were fantastic, beautifully done, and pretty funny. Hats off to whoever envisioned these angles, as well as everyone involved in pulling them off. I love the shots of Drogon too, the way he swooped down and burnt the loot train, and especially the shot of him gliding along the butt-smooth water surface, which is beautiful. You can totally feel Drogon's power and speed, and dare I say it, his grace. But before the battle, Tarly said that,
"All the gold safely through the gates of King's Landing."
Good.
with Cersei's army destroyed, we can expect her to hire more people to die, namely the Golden Company. I won't get into too much detail right now, but I wouldn't be surprised if people start speculating about whether another mystery Targaryen, Rhaegar's son Aegon, will come back into play. So you remember how Oberyn was pissed that the Mountain killed his sister and Rhaegar's two children, Rhaenys and Aegon? Well, in the books, Aegon was a baby, so supposedly they swapped him with another baby, because, babies kind of look alike, and they snuck him out of King's Landing. He's with one of my favorite characters, Mad King Aerys' hand, Jon Connington. They go by the names Griff and Young Griff, and towards the end of the 5th book, they join up with the Golden Company and invade Westeros ahead of Dany, and no one realizes that he's a secret Targaryen. But in the show, I bet Cersei just hires them as swords for her wars. I don't think we'll get Griff or Young Griff, unfortunately. The thing is, she mentioned wanting to recover something that is hers. Let's listen.
I too would like them to recover some things that belong to me.
Does anyone have any idea what she's talking about? The best I can think of is Tyrion or Casterly Rock. Now let's go back to Dragonstone quickly. A 3-note combo in the musical score made me feel as if we were arriving into Jurassic Park. Alright, so Jon showed Dany the cave paintings, and he assumes that the humans and the children were at war with the Night King and the White Walkers. So fans assume that Jon has to kill the Night King. But that seems strange, since so far, Jon has always solved problems by bringing people together. He's a mediator, not a conqueror. Melisandre thinks that she has brought together ice and fire, but Jon is a Song of Ice and Fire, since he has both Stark and Targaryen blood. So more likely, Jon is going to bring them together, the Night King and Dany, in some way, shape, or form. There's got to be a balance. Maybe Jon will kill them both. Davos noted that Dany had...
I think she has a good heart.
Maybe that line foreshadows Dany having a good heart to shove Dragonglass into and make a Night Queen, or shove Dawn through to forge Lightbringer. Or maybe Jon will become the new Night King. I thought about that after Davos said this.
Sir Davos, Lord Snow.
King Snow, isn't it? No, that doesn't sound right. King John?
It doesn't matter.
Now let's head up to Winterfell, where a lot happened. Last week, I made a joke video about Bran having a creepy vision of Jon and Ygritte, since Bran had a creepy speech to Sansa.
And you were so beautiful.
7 hells! My watch is ended.
But now I get it. Bran is no longer Bran, so I'm going to start calling him the Three-Eyed Raven. Actually, no, that's too many syllables. I'm going to stick with Bran, but like he told Mira, he's not really Bran anymore.
Bran!
I'm not really.
I don't buy any theory that he's being controlled by Bloodraven or some non-existent deity like the Great Other or the Three-Eyed Raven. He is changing simply as a function of downloading information from so many different perspectives across time.
You died in that cave.
Bran's still inside of him, but as he learns more and more from outside of Bran's eyes, Bran becomes a smaller and smaller piece of who he is. And although he knows about Littlefinger's machinations, I don't think he looks at them personally anymore, because he does not associate himself with the Starks. In an abstract way, Bran simply associates himself with life as a whole. To play devil's advocate, he did ask Littlefinger where he got the dagger, so it seemed like he was sort of testing Littlefinger.
Do you know who this belonged to?
Alright, our girl Arya arrived back to Winterfell, or rather, no one arrived back to Winterfell. Just like Bran, Arya has changed significantly. Check out these lines with hints at her being no one.
Arya Stark's dead.
She was nothing.
Everyone who knew his face is dead.
We're not.
So all of these point to Arya being dead, or close to it, figuratively speaking. But she's not entirely dead. Here are 3 examples to prove that. She headed north to Winterfell after Hot Pie told her that Jon was alive and King of the North. She went in for a second hug with Sansa, which seemed pretty genuine. And she smiled when she heard that Bran was back.
Bran's home too.
But just like the line she said to the Lannister soldiers,
I'm going to kill the Queen.
she nonchalantly says this to Sansa.
However long my list got, he was always first.
Your list.
Of people I'm going to kill.
This is another sign of Arya being no one. At times, she's completely out of touch with reality. At times, she's driven by revenge, like Lady Stoneheart, which is why I still think that she killed those Lannister soldiers earlier in the season. Especially since Brian pointed out that he saw her at the crossroads.
I saw you at the crossroads.
You saw me?
Now you could argue that he is saying how he saw her pausing there, undecided on which way to go, to King's Landing for Cersei or Winterfell for her family. But I think what he was really saying was that he saw her murder innocent people. If true, that's pretty wild. It's also worth noting that the Inn at the Crossroads hosted many notable events. This is where Nymeria bit Joffrey, Ned killed Lady Catelyn captured Tyrion, and the Hound fought Gregor's men. And in the books, it's where Brienne fights the Brave Companions and is then captured by Gendry and Lady Stoneheart's men. So it's pretty clear. This inn is the crossroads of the realms physically, as well as the intersection of various subplots. Let's go back up to Winterfell though. I love the way she looked around when she got there. In Bran 3, Bloodraven explains how trees are able to see the past. The oak is the acorn is the oak. Most of the people in this shot are just living day to day. Their eyes are open, but they're not seeing, not truly seeing.
You were not seeing.
I was so. I watched, but you...
Watching is not seeing, dead girl.
But Arya is sitting here truly seeing. The past, the present, and arguably the future. She's taking in the big picture.
The seeing. The true seeing. That is the heart of swordplay.
Dani had a similar experience for a moment in the cave, when she was sort of seeing as both the acorn and the oak.
We were right here. Standing where we're standing.
Before we head back up to Winterfell, it's worth noting that Bren and Arya are not the only two to have changed. Jon's dead too. Like Beric, Jon's heart probably is not beating, which makes Sansa's line to Arya pretty ironic.
I remember how happy he was to see me. When he sees you, his heart will probably stop.
Now, outside at the Heart Tree, we first hear crows. As a reminder, dead singers live inside these crows. Dead singers meaning the children of the forest. And in case you didn't know this already, Bran does not have to touch a weirwood tree in order to have visions, and he does not see only through the eyes of weirwood trees. Weirwood trees are sort of like the training wheels for a bicycle. New greenseers need to touch a weirwood tree, and new greenseers can only see out of the eyes of a weirwood tree. But an advanced greenseer can see well beyond weirwood trees. Bran gave the Catspaw dagger to Arya and said that it would be...
It's wasted on a cripple.
Hopefully, this doesn't foreshadow the dagger being used to kill him in the future. It might though. And let's end with Brienne. In the first quick clip with her, Pod reminds her that she kept her vow, since both Stark girls are home safely. This is huge. Brienne's story has been about failing to protect those that she's sworn to protect, first Renly and then Lady Catelyn. So it has to be satisfying that the Stark girls are back in Winterfell. But there's another reason they brought up this concept of a vow. I don't think we'll get this drama until season 8, but there's a good chance that we will get the second half of the Lady Stoneheart plot to carry out in order to complete Brienne's book plot. That's why her sword is named Oathkeeper, to make the scene more poetic whenever it happens. At some point, she's going to be forced to choose between her love for Jaime and her oath to the Starks. And watch out, Littlefinger. Arya's going to learn what you did from the Hound, wear Sansa's face, and slit your throat. And did you know that Maisie Williams is right-handed? She uses her right hand here to do this neat little knife flare, but she always sword fights with her left hand because Arya in the books is left-handed. This is pretty impressive, especially when she was doing it 6 years ago as a little girl. Hats off to you, Maisie.
Someone forgot to write down all your great deeds.
There's still time.
Not a very pleasant one.
Mine neither. But our stories aren't over yet.
Who taught you how to do that?
No one.